A sergeant and a professional assassin both discover that his wife has been killed in a car accident.
Somebody write this.
Hi, and welcome to Somebody Write This, where we use a random plot generator to give us an idea, and then we brainstorm how that could be a thing somebody might want to write. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Jenny, and to help us with our brainstorming today, we have a guest. Let's welcome Simon Elson. Hi, Simon.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you join us. You reached out to us and said you'd been listening to the podcast and mentioned that you were in the process at the time of writing a book, which I understand is now about to be on the verge of being published, or maybe will be by the time this comes out. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about that.
Of course. So the novel is coming out on the 1st of May. That is the deadline that I've set myself to. And as you said, I started writing it last summer and I finished it now. It's the first novel I've ever written, which I'm really excited about because it's a brand new venture for me. And in terms of the novel and the content itself, I decided to write a dystopian novel because that has always been my favourite type of fiction. But I felt that there were some areas of the genre that were unexplored. And the novel I've written is called Hades Forest. And what it really represents to me is my attempt to bring the dystopian novel into the 21st century, really. And I've tried to do that by exploring ideas around mental health, ideas around disabilities, ideas around climate change. And what I'm essentially asking my reader is, how do these very modern concepts exist in a dystopian society?
Was the decision to write a dystopian novel influenced in any way by the idea that last summer we were in the middle of a global pandemic and all of a sudden found ourselves living in this apocalypse world?
Yes, it absolutely was. It felt a little bit too close to home, and sometimes I feel like the best way to understand what's going on around you is to write about it. So that's exactly what I tried to do.
So as you started writing this was your first novel. What were some things that you have learned from this process for your future books?
Oh, I could write a thesis on all the things I have learned. And I can confidently say that I am significantly better at writing now than I was when I first started. It's been a huge learning process, as writing any novel is. In terms of what I've learned, I would say that I've definitely learned the importance of channeling my energy into small few hour periods rather than doing it over a long period of time, because I get a lot more done when I write focused for 2 hours than I do when I write at a medium pace for 10 hours. And that's what I've really learned, really.
What has the process been like of editing it for you? Have you been doing that yourself? Have you had other folks do it? Have you had other friends or hired somebody to read through it? What has that process been like for you?
It's been all three of those things, actually. I edited it as I went along, so I would write a chapter and then edit it, because for me, that gave me clarity of thought in that how could I focus on what comes next unless I know what comes before? And that was the approach that I took. I then, once I'd done all of that process and finished the novel, I sent it off to an editor. And then since having got it back from my editor, I'm also now running it past friends and family. So it's been a real process of just endless amounts of tiresome energy. And I think I'm nearing the end now, which is a huge relief.
There's a big difference in sharing something you've written with an editor, somebody who does this for a living, who is going to just brutally tear it apart, all the pieces that it needs to be fixed, versus sometimes showing it to family and friends who like you and
It's
want
scary,
you to be happy.
but both represent a real fear to me, because when it's your family and friends, you're worried that they may lie to you because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But then equally, the editor has no emotional attachment to you, so they can be as brutal as you want. In either instance, you're leaving yourself really vulnerable, which is quite a scary thing first time round.
Oh, you make editors sound so scary.
But it's true. And you need that. You need somebody who's going to be willing to be brutal with you, and not.
You need somebody who's willing to be honest.
Yes, I think so. I agree.
So as you wrap up this project, are you already starting to think about your next one, or are you going to let that sit for a bit and focus on
I am
promoting
indeed,
it?
and I'd actually already thought about it before I started writing this one, because I wanted it to be a trilogy, and therefore I wrote a plot that fit with that. So I've already got plans for how the second and third novel are going to go, and I am going to get started with that once the novel comes out on the 1st of May.
Oh, that is very exciting.
That is super exciting. I'm definitely going to have to check that out when it comes out.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll let you share any other info we need about that as we get further on. But we're gonna take pause on that for now, and we are going to jump into our brainstorming of the day. So, as a reminder, our plot that we've chosen is a sergeant and a professional assassin both discover that his wife has been killed in a car accident. So the immediate first question is, who is his? Is that the sergeant or either a sergeant or a professional assassin? Could be a him. Neither one of them is gendered.
Well, I think the reason I wanted to choose this one is because in my mind, the word his applies to both of them. And I want to create a scenario in which they both have the same wife.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I like you. You can stay.
I don't know how that would work, though. I need your expertise on how we would achieve that.
My immediate thought is that they don't know that they share the wife.
Yes.
Definitely.
A professional assassin it has sort of maybe a secretive double life kind of situation anyway. Like it's somebody who is not necessarily very open about their world. So it
Yeah. And a sergeant might be deployed often.
might be away.
I agree. Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that if these two individuals have the same wife, then they would definitely have no chance of crossing paths because otherwise there may be some conflict there. So I think they definitely live in separate countries or live in separate states because that's the only way that I think that could function.
Does the wife know this? I mean, obviously she knew she married them both, but does she think maybe that the sergeant has been killed? And so she marries a professional assassin.
Oh.
What are you thinking?
What if the professional assassin was hired to kill the sergeant? And that's how they meet.
Oh, okay.
I'm scared.
So does the professional assassin get close to the wife because he's trying to like figure out how to kill the sergeant who is gone? Or does he come back after he thinks he's killed the sergeant?
So he gets close to the sergeant to learn about him, but then falls in love with the wife in the process.
See, just to throw a wrench in the works, I've actually been thinking that the wife was doing it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like she knew she was marrying two men and was having these two separate lives and keeping them secret.
Well, then I think the question becomes, what is the occupation of the wife?
Yeah, what is she doing?
Because she would have to travel. If these two men are living in separate locations, then she would have to have a job that would excuse her traveling back and forth.
Right, yes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this all hinges on who the wife is and why she would marry two men and how that blows up.
So with military and assassination, there comes up the possibility of political intrigue. Is she a spy of some sort?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's interesting because a sergeant and an assassin are such extreme professions that in my mind, I almost want her to have the most mundane job in the world. I kind of wish that she's just a kind of traveling librarian or salesman or something. And
head of sales somewhere.
Do you know what I mean? And there's no way you would ever imagine
Yeah.
that she's the kind of person to get involved with this.
Okay, so she's head of or she works in international sales for some really boring company, and so she travels around meeting other companies and negotiating sales deals with them.
Brilliant.
And she has. So does she meet the sergeant while he's deployed and get married out there, and then the assassin is back at home for her, or is it the reverse?
It could be either or, really.
Yeah. And is it malicious? Did she on purpose say, I'm going to marry two men and be sneaky? Or did she genuinely fall in love with both of them and just didn't want to let go of the other one?
I think that she's being sneaky and that her very ordinary job is a ruse to hide her sneakiness.
That's the thing, is that we're getting into all like the wife's motivations and why would she do this and what mysterious answers this below. But there's something to be said here for the possibility that these, maybe after she is killed in a car accident and these two find out that they're connected, maybe this is a lot about them trying to like find the answers, find like what mysterious thing ties the three of us together.
Yeah.
What is this?
Well,
Only to find out that that's not really what it was. She just did this for mundane reasons. She fell in love with two people and one was never around, or I don't know. And so it could be a kind of an interesting look at how how we try to make sense out of grief. And it's almost easier if there's a big dramatic interweaving web of
Yes.
crazy conspiracy ideas, when in the end it's just that they have to kind of settle into the fact that their wife wasn't who they thought she
I
was.
think that's such a good idea because the fact that this plot could be so complicated but turns out not to be. Often, when you are going through grief, you like to throw yourself into something that distracts you. And
Oh,
perhaps in this
yes.
case, they are
Hmm.
seeking distraction in the form of this elaborate story that they're buying into.
I'm picturing the assassin casing the sergeant's home, like he's due to
Hmm.
come back from tour or something, and he's
Hmm.
finding all these pictures of his own wife, his deceased wife, in this other guy's house.
Yes.
And a car accident could be something that they could easily both think that the other made this happen, that it
That's
was something
true.
that,
It could be mundane or it could be malicious.
like, or and they could each think it's malicious, even if it was
Right.
just an accident. They could spend a lot of this time trying to get proof that this other person did something to her, that they set
Oh,
her up for this, that they
Wow.
hired
So,
somebody to
so
ram
they're
into her.
working together yet against each other at the same time.
Yeah.
I like it.
How early do they know about each other? Like, do they find out right away? Do they both show up? Are they both on separate emergency contact lists
Well,
and both get notified?
well, I was going to ask, how early in the novel does the car accident take place? Is it right at the
Mm.
start, midway through, at the end?
I feel like it must be right at the start,
Yeah,
and
I would agree.
anything we learn about the wife is through flashbacks
Oh,
and
that would be
memories
interesting.
and photographs.
I like that because it kind of takes the audience along on that journey of not really knowing who she was.
This could be turned
Exactly,
into a
exactly.
movie.
It
It
could.
could. It really
Where's
could.
Christopher Nolan?
Yeah,
This is
he would be perfect for this.
this has a very
Yes, he
like
would.
Gone Girl vibe to it for me. um
Mm.
okay, so yeah, I love the idea that we don't see the wife like at all until I
Yeah,
only hear about her through them.
yeah, because if we know so little about her, then that almost drags us along the story with the two individuals.
The two
Mhm.
individuals who thought they knew her and then find out they don't, and then find out they really did.
Yeah,
Brilliant. I love
it's
that.
an interesting little cycle, which
Mm.
But it's more realistic, I think. That's why I like
Yes,
it, because what are the chances that your wife is going to be a secret spy as opposed to just an ordinary salesperson?
exactly,
exactly.
an ordinary salesperson who found out she could get away with marrying two people.
Right.
Um, yeah. Okay. Well, so I think we got a good handle on this. Let's see if everything gets thrown off the rails by our title.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Our title is Frankie and the Independents. But if we want to
Oh,
make it Frankie
well,
and Independence, we can, if that's more useful. Is Frankie the woman?
I think so. I think her name is Frances and she goes by Frankie.
I agree. I think that's really. She's definitely a Francis, but her calling
Well,
herself Frankie is her way of kind of rebranding herself and making herself more
One
interesting.
one calls her Frances, one calls her Frankie.
Yes.
and and now here's my second thought. Like, you could have a play on the independence. Like, is the independence the, I don't know, is the sergeant, no, he wouldn't be in the Navy, they don't have sergeants.
But is it the name of something? Is the name
Yes.
Right,
of a
right. Is it the
mission,
name of
or
something official, or is it, a play on her personal freedom to,
Mhm.
Well, if it's a play on her personal freedom, then you would have to suggest that the car accident was intentional and that she had engineered it,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting.
as though it was her way of gaining independence by seeking a way out from a life that she
Oof.
wasn't enjoying.
Goodness, what was going
That
on
would
with
be
her?
That's they don't know. That's the whole thing, is
Ooh.
that like they have to consider all the possibilities. And the independence could be, I mean, it could be, again, if we're looking at the story where they're coming up with all these elaborate theories to explain this away. And maybe the independence is, yeah, it's a vague enough word that it could be a code name for something, or it could be they could both think it refers to something that involves their work, or and be searching for this the whole time, only to find out that the true independence was I don't know. Maybe it's about the independence that she wanted to have, to be with whichever one she felt she wanted at the time, or to be able to be with both of them, since maybe it was a situation where neither one of them was always going to be able to be there for her. Like, the sergeant was deployed a lot of the time, or the professional assassin spent months and months at a time surveilling his clients and
Uh-huh.
and that kind of thing. So
His
maybe it's
clients.
Yeah, his clients. I guess that's not how that works. His targets.
There you go.
And so maybe it's a situation where maybe it's playing on the idea that her independence to be able to choose who she wants to be happy with, and to choose a life where she can find somebody when they're not able to be with her or something. Getting into some very, I don't know. Maybe that's where that's going, and they just have to and it's about them having to make their peace with that's what she wanted.
That could be one way it goes, definitely. Another thing I thought is that it says that the wife was killed in a car accident, and we haven't yet explored who the other side of the car accident was, as in who was the person in the other car. Now, perhaps if this woman was intentionally killed, then maybe the organization that killed her is called the Independents.
Oh, like what if somebody found out who she was married to?
Yeah, the professional assassin. If someone has found out that the professional assassin has killed one of their family members, then perhaps they go after the wife to hurt the professional assassin, and that's why she is killed.
I still really love the idea of it turning out to be nothing.
Yeah.
But I think all of these work into it as something that is a very plausible explanation that they come up with and that they dig into. And then eventually they find that that's not the case.
Yeah.
But
a writer could have so much fun with all of these false leads.
Absolutely. It's a thriller. It's such a thriller.
Really is. So question, at the end, do the sergeant and the assassin find out that there's nothing to it, or does only the audience know? Is there a bit at the end where the audience reveals this, but as far as we know, the sergeant and the assassin just continue looking for the wife's killer forever?
Oh, no, that hurts. Oh, I want them to have resolution.
I think that if these two individuals spend the whole novel together, then perhaps by the end we want them to become friends. And therefore I think they would only become friends if they found out that there was nothing to it.
Or maybe one of them finds out and the other one doesn't want to believe it. There can be a moment where they're like trying to say, hey, we need to let this go. I think there's not more to it than we've been digging into. And the other one's like, no, I'm definitely going to find out what's going on. And you can give up if you want.
That's a really real way of dealing with grief. A lot of people try to latch onto something that isn't there.
And I think that way we get at least half resolution. I don't have to be so mean as to give neither one of them it. But
no, I think that works to have one of them, if you didn't want a kind of quote unquote happy ending for both of them, it would be very realistic to have one of them. And you know what? Maybe you could even leave it up to the audience to decide whether or not the one who just let it go was right.
Yeah.
So the audience at the end doesn't know if the wife was involved with all of this stuff or not, but one of the men believes that it was just accidental.
Jenny, I feel like you're building up to a sequel.
Right. It could be. I think part of the wrestling through all this is not just the fact that she died, but very much looking at the double life that she lived. And because we haven't really delved into that as much, like it would be a horrible betrayal to find out that your wife had married somebody else and had a second family. And so really kind of dealing into not just why did she die, was she a spy, but also reckoning with the fact that she lied to them and was living this whole other life and pretending she wasn't. And reckoning with the fact that their wife treated them badly and they didn't ever get a chance to confront her about it.
That's and to fuel the her possible involvement in all this intrigue is, I mean, she's married a military man and a professional assassin. Obviously she has friends in high places and in political circles.
Yeah.
So could be anybody.
Oh, this is
meaty. It's juicy. I like it.
It is. We're coming close to the end of the time to discuss this, but I want to say, is there anything that we haven't really tackled yet? Anything that we haven't delved into?
All I can say is I absolutely adore the idea of a novel that brings you on this chase and then it ends up being super mundane and ordinary. Yeah. I really like that idea.
Well, I was wondering if they had if there were children involved. You have two marriages here.
That adds a whole nother level of complication.
We might have to leave that up to our listeners.
I'm feeling like probably not, just because that would be harder to maintain. She'd have to either leave the child with somebody or take the child to meet both.
Well, and unless they're grown, like is the sergeant older?
Is she older?
Did one of the men already have a child from a previous marriage or relationship?
Maybe she definitely could be like a stepmom to someone.
Yeah. Just, are there other family members involved? Does she have parents who are living and know anything about her life.
Does she have friends in each location who know the husband that she is with there? Like,
Right. Yeah.
like is this full on double life, or does it really only come up with these two and nobody else really knows about them?
So this is the kind of book where you have to have so many details. The writer has to have so many details and only put some of them to the reader. Somebody write this. I need to read this.
Very, very much. This one, we get into so many weird, fun sci-fi fantasy ones, and I really like the
Yes.
emotional heart of this one. This one is
Yeah.
Yes.
very...
It's cool to have a real world plot that is fully emotional and real.
Yeah.
Well, it's grounded in very real emotions of grief and how you deal with death, and that would hook the reader in because you're not dealing with the fantastical or the unbelievable. It's something that we all
Yeah.
experience.
Oh, I like this. Yes. Somebody write this. Somebody do this. So we are going to close the door on that, but please somebody write something based off of this. I would
Yes.
absolutely love to read this. We're going to scoot on into one of our final sections of the show. We're going to take a second to recommend something to our listeners. I think in light of this, I'm going to share another movie, or a movie about another person who's searching for answers. It's an old favorite of mine. It's Memento by Christopher Nolan.
Ooh, yes.
One of his early movies, and brilliantly told. And it's very much grappling with similar questions. But additionally, for anybody who doesn't know the story, the main character has lost his short-term memory and can only hold on to memories like 5 minutes at a time. And so the film is actually told backwards. So we see like a 5-minute snippet, and then it jumps back to what was happening before. So we are constantly in the same place mentally as he is, trying to figure out what has just happened. And he's trying to do this as he's trying to, I believe, solve his wife's murder. It's been a little while since I watched it, and so but I think that is the inciting incident there. And so it is a lot of questions about loss and about grief and about how he personally, as someone with this affliction, deals with it. It's really, really brilliantly told. I'm not going to share how it ends up, but it's a really excellent movie. And if you've seen newer Christopher Nolan but never checked out Memento, I absolutely you definitely need to. It's in my top 20 of all time. It's so good. Jenny, I'm going to ask you, what would you like to share this week?
Well, first off, I second that motion. Memento is amazing. Along the lines of being real and emotional, I'm going to recommend Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. Some of our listeners may or may not know she had a blog for a very long time, and she has since published a couple of books in the same style as her blog, or a similar style. She writes very real stories about herself and her childhood and how she perceives the world, and they are frequently hilarious, but they are also very raw and real and reach people in ways that no other stories do, in my experience so far. And they're accompanied by just these quirky, delightful, weird little cartoons that, emphasize the humor or whatever emotion she's trying to portray. So yeah, definitely recommend for anybody to at least check out the blog. But if you enjoy the blog, buy her books because they're amazing.
All right, Simon, I'm going to toss it over to you. What is a story you'd like to recommend for our listeners?
I would like to recommend an absolutely beautiful little book that I read last summer. It is called Flush, a Biography, and it is a book written by Virginia Woolf. It is very short, not too long at all, so it won't take up more than a few days of your time. And it's beautifully written, obviously, because it's by Virginia Woolf. And it is it is a biography of the dog of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who was a famous poet of the time. I think it's poet anyway.
Yes.
And essentially, Virginia Woolf knew Elizabeth Barrett Browning and therefore knew her dog, and she's written a biography of the dog. And obviously, if you like dogs, then it's the most perfect book for you because it's all the main character, the protagonist, the hero, is a Cocker Spaniel, and it's such a quintessentially English book because it's set in the countryside of England, but then there's also scenes in the city of London. It's really, really beautifully written, very, very lovely language, and I really recommend it as a nice short read.
That sounds awesome. I have read know Virginia Woolf at this point, I think, and I need to fix that. I need to remedy that. And this sounds like an awesome way to start with that. All right, Simon. Before we let you go, what would you like to share with our listeners as far as where they can find your book, where they can find any of your social media or website? What would you like to share?
Of course. So I have a website. It is simonelsonauthor.com. That's SIMONELSON, author.com. I have Twitter at SimonElson5. I have Instagram at SimonElsonAuthor. I'm also on LinkedIn. And in terms of buying my novel, it comes out on the 1st of May 2021, and you can buy it on Amazon. It is called Hades Forest.
Excellent. We'll put all that info in the show descriptions so that you can all follow along with Simon's writing journey and check out this dystopian book. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you reached out to us. This has been a blast.
My absolute pleasure. I've had an amazing time. Thank you so much.
This is a good one. I'm excited.
I had such a good time.
All right, folks. That is our episode. And as a reminder, you can find us every other Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on Twitter at WriteThisPod, and if you've been inspired by this episode and have questions or comments or a story or anything else, email us at somebodywritethis@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
And as they say, there is always water in an old river.